Hello and welcome to the Cipher Brief's first all-virtual Cybersecurity Summit. I am Suzanne Kelly, CEO and publisher of the Cipher Brief, here with our COO, Brad Christian, and our CMO, Alicia Volpe.
And I'm Rick Ledgett, former Deputy Director of the National Security Agency and an advisor to the Cipher Brief. Suzanne and I are really looking forward to having you with us over the next 3 days as we talk with some of the world's leading experts on cyber to share their perspectives about where we are and where we need to be.
If you're a national security insider, you probably already know about the Cipher Brief, but if you're new to us, and there are a bunch of you out there today who are new to us, welcome. We are a nonpartisan, expert-driven national security publisher that is really focused on that sweet spot between the public and private sectors and figuring out how we make the mission of national security more central and how we sort of close those gaps. We work with a host of well-known national security experts from both sides of the political aisle. We try to strip politics out as much as possible, which, as you can imagine, is not an easy task. But you can find a list of those experts that we work with at thecipherbrief.com/experts. And I invite you to sign up for our free daily newsletter as well at thecipherbrief.com. That's where we deliver not only a daily source open report or open source report on stories that are sort of helping to shape the global security agenda, but we also highlight expert-driven insights, perspective, and analysis from experts like Rick.
And today we're honored to be welcoming more than 1,000 registered guests from both the public and the private sectors this week. If you want to know more about who your fellow attendees are, they include folks who are involved in all aspects of cybersecurity and critical infrastructure security protection, as well as those running global companies, academics, and thought leaders in this space. You can find the agenda that will guide us through the next 3 days as a download in your attendee window, or you can find it online at cyberinitiativesgroup.com/agenda. Also, we do want you to get involved in the conversation. So if you have comments or questions, please use the question box within your control panel, probably on the right-hand side of your screen. Or you can always email your questions to Brad Christian at bchristian@thecipherbrief.com.
Also, we've had a lot of requests from around the world where, for example, in Australia, it's very early. We've had folks writing in and asking if there will be a recorded version of this. There will be, and that will be posted on the Cipher Brief's YouTube channel. So if it's getting a little late wherever you are in the world, don't worry, you can go back and watch a recorded version of this as well. Rick, as we kick off these conversations with people like Microsoft President Brad Smith, FireEye CEO Kevin Mandia, Dave Luber from the National Security Agency, Brandon Wales from CISA, Senator Mark Warner, and others, I just want to ask what's top of mind for you first as we go through this. So we've had SolarWinds, we've had Hafnium. What are you thinking about as we start 3 days of high-level conversations on these issues?
Well, Suzanne, I really think that what key place to start with SolarWinds and the Microsoft Exchange issue, the Hafnium issue, is nation states. Nation states are still and continue to attack the United States, and they're after our information. They're after your information. It's not just government; it's also corporate. And they are sophisticated, they're well-resourced, and they are persistent. And so they're going to be successful, and they're going to do the things that they want to do. And what we're hoping to explore over the next couple of days is what we can do about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, Rick, I think we see Secretary Chertoff, who has just joined us now. One of the things we really try to do here at the Cipher Brief is just connect you with all of these expert thoughts. And Secretary Chertoff was kind enough to agree to come on and share some of his thoughts at this moment as we kick off this conference as well. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you again. We're just kind of setting the stage for 3 days of conversations after the last 6 months that we've been through in the cyber world with SolarWinds, which impacted the government and the private sector, with the Hafnium breach, which was just announced a couple of weeks ago. Sir, I'm interested to know, you run one of the world's sort of leading companies now at the Chertoff Group, where you're performing sort of advisory services for companies. What are companies most worried about right now, and what's top of mind for you as we go into these conversations?
Well, I think, first of all, I agree with Rick. I mean, nation states are being much more visible and much more active. And a piece of that is the scale of what we're seeing in breaches is hugely beyond what we saw, even a few years ago. And so from a reputational standpoint, a lot of companies are very concerned that they may have been breached or there may be vulnerabilities and they're scrambling to see what they can do to plug the hole. The other thing which I think is challenging is more and more of what we're seeing, in addition to the typical phishing attacks and the targeted attacks, are efforts to infect the supply chain,
Mhm.
like either identifying or creating vulnerabilities for example, network management software like we saw in SolarWinds, or other kinds of software that may be involved, coding, for example, which may be incorporated into new updates. And that means you're not only now responsible for training your own workforce and checking your own perimeter and vulnerabilities, but you're needing to worry about your vendors and your service providers and whether they are infecting you. I have to be slightly amused in that discussions about cyber attacks now resemble what we're hearing about the virus. You have to worry about being infected by somebody else, or being in a crowd, or who's providing you with something at a restaurant that then may wind up becoming your problem. In many ways, there's an analogy between the kinds of precautions you need to take in the physical environment and those in the cyber environment. So I think what we're seeing now is a real focus on how do you manage what looks to be an almost inevitable amount of breach, by at least reducing the dwell time and identifying once there has been a penetration so you can respond before you get any serious damage. The last thing I would say, didn't get quite as much publicity, but there was, I guess in the last couple of months, an attack on a water system in Florida, which actually could have poisoned people in the real world. And that reminds us that in addition to theft of data and intellectual property and, of course, typical criminality, we have to worry about this sliding over into real damage in the physical world. And that's going to require, first of all, that companies that are in critical infrastructure be particularly mindful of this, but also the government's going to have to work even more closely with critical infrastructure in identifying threats.
Rick may have a quick question for you. I'm not sure, but I just wonder, is it going to take one of these events? Because we've been talking about a Cyber 9/11 for years. Is it going to take one of these events like the one you cited in Florida, where lives are lost that are connected to a cyber incident, in order for everyone to sort of raise the bar a little bit on actually achieving some of these goals we've been trying to achieve, which is sharing information faster, sharing information in environments where things aren't so overclassified? Is it going to take an event like that to change our mindset around cyber?
I don't think people are failing to appreciate the threat. I think that what I find with a lot of clients in the private sector is there are so many solutions that they're overwhelmed. Again, to use the analogy of the virus, when the public health authorities get out and tell you all the things you can't do, so that leaving the house becomes akin to planning D-Day, a lot of people throw their hands up in the air and they say, I can't bother, I got to just take my chances. So part of what we need to do is manage expectations.
Mhm.
For example, I mean, one of the key points I make is if you think you're never going to get attacked successfully, it's like saying I'm never going to get sick. It's not realistic.
Mhm.
What you want to do is reduce the consequences and mitigate those consequences. So to me, a key issue is managing expectations and giving people a doable, sustainable approach that is tailored to the particular threats that are aimed at their sector, and then allows them not to totally absorb all of their resources in trying to play whack-a-mole.
Yeah, which I think a lot of companies, would you agree, Rick, have been trying to do?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think that there's a little bit of a dichotomy in this space where you've got private sector folks who are bemoaning the complexity of the environment. They've got all these tools, and they're trying to integrate them. They're trying to narrow things down and get what they call a single pane of glass in their security operations center where they can see everything. The problem with that is that's exactly what SolarWinds did. It was software that integrated other people's software, and it gives you basically a nice big juicy fat target for entities to go after, because instead of having to solve 100 problems, I only have to solve one problem, and now I've got access to all the stuff I need. So it's really, it's a tough problem. Finding that sweet spot, I think, is a real challenge for us.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, any closing thoughts to leave us with? We really appreciate you popping in here and sharing some of the concerns you're hearing from out there.
No, I think it's incredibly important to have this discussion. I do think, I'm in touch virtually, not in real physical terms, with a lot of counterparts in Europe and Japan, and I have seen that this issue, particularly a supply chain issue, has now elevated and is really a big focus of concern. I know, for example, the EU is now looking very hard at how do we promote resilience among critical infrastructure. And I do think there's more of an appetite now to cooperate with us and having like-minded nations and allies work together to do things like manage supply chain security, make sure that we are careful about who is providing our critical infrastructure, because, China is making a big play to become the world's dominant supplier in 5G, which would, as I'm sure Rick can tell you, would be all kinds of problems for us. So there is a spirit of cooperation. And I do think there are folks now, I know, Ann Neuberger, who's at the White House, who understand both the government and the private sector. And I think there's an opportunity now to make some real progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Sir, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to checking in with you again over the next several months, and really want to thank you for your time and your thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.